3 weeks had passed since that first day in Professor Krillix's class. 3 weeks that had changed everything at Valon Academy. Hay walked through the main corridor toward the training hall. Other students moved aside to let her pass, some with respect, some with lingering fear. She had gotten used to it. Being the only human in a school full of aliens meant standing out, and after what happened with Kale, everyone knew who she was. The training hall was already occupied when she arrived. Kale was there, along with Yoon and 5 other students from various species. They had all asked to train with her, to learn what she called practical combat. Professor Krillix had approved it as an extracurricular activity, though Hai suspected he was also curious to see what would happen. "You're late," Kyle said, but there was no judgment in his voice, just a statement of fact. The proud warrior who had challenged her on the first day had changed. He was still confident, still strong, but his arrogance had been replaced with humility. "Sorry," Hai said. "Professor Murnix wanted to discuss my tactics paper. He had a lot of questions about human military history." "I'm not surprised," said a gray-skinned alien named Dax. He was the stocky, rock-like student who had spoken up during that first class. "Everyone's talking about humans now. The other professors are updating their curricula to include Earth combat examples." Hay set down her bag and began stretching. In the light gravity, she had to be careful to maintain her Earth fitness level. It would be easy to get weak here, to let her muscles adapt to the easier environment, but she knew that would be a mistake. "Have you all been practicing the falls I showed you last session?" "Every day," Yoon said. Her voice was stronger now, more confident. The timid rabbit-like alien had discovered that she actually enjoyed training. "I can do the backfall without thinking about it now." "Good," Hay said. "Falls are important. If you can't fall safely, you can't train properly. And if you can't train properly, you can't learn." Over the past 3 weeks, Hai had been teaching her small group the basics of human martial arts. Not advanced techniques, not complex strategies, just the fundamentals. How to fall without getting hurt. How to stand properly. How to move efficiently. How to stay calm when someone grabbed you. Most importantly, she taught them how to think like someone from a Deathworld. "Today, we're going to work on weapon defense again," Hai announced. "Kale, did you bring your practice blade?" Kale pulled out a training knife, identical in shape to his family blade but made of soft rubber. "Ready." "Remember," Hay said, addressing the whole group, "the goal isn't to fight the weapon. The goal is to control the person holding it. Weapons are dangerous, but they're just tools. The real threat is the person." She had them pair up and practice the disarm technique she had used on Kale. Over and over, slowly at first, then gradually faster. Some of them struggled with the movements. Their bodies were shaped differently from humans, their joints moved in different ways. But Hay helped them adapt the techniques to their own physiology. "The principles are what matter," she explained to Dax, who was having trouble with his rock-like fingers. "You don't have to do it exactly like me. Find what works for your body. The goal is the same. Move inside their reach, control their weapon arm, take their balance." An hour into the training session, Professor Krillix arrived. He watched quietly from the doorway, his forearms crossed, his antennae moving constantly as he processed what he saw. When they took a break, he approached Hay. "May I speak with you privately?" They moved to the side of the hall, away from the other students. The professor's compound eyes reflected the training lights as he looked at her. "I've been reviewing the security footage from your first day," he said quietly. "I've watched it dozens of times, analyzed every movement. I've also been researching Earth combat techniques." "And?" he prompted. "You held back," Professor Krillix said. "When you disarmed Kale, you held back significantly. You could have hurt him much worse, couldn't you?" Hay nodded slowly. "Yes, if that had been a real threat, I would have broken his wrist when I struck it. I would have choked him unconscious instead of just controlling him. And I definitely wouldn't have helped him up afterward. Why show restraint? It would have made your point more effectively." "Because the point wasn't to win a fight," Hai said. "The point was to teach. If I had hurt Kale badly, he would have been in medical care instead of here training with us. Fear makes people freeze. Respect makes them learn." Professor Krillix's antennae quivered. "You are wiser than your age suggests." "My mother taught me that strength without wisdom is just violence," Hay said. "Anyone can hurt someone weaker. It takes real skill to defeat someone without damaging them." "Your mother sounds like a remarkable person." "She was." Hay said quietly. She died 2 years ago. Training accident, ironically. She was teaching a rescue technique to some firefighters, and the building they were using for practice had a structural failure. She saved 3 people before the collapse. I'm sorry for your loss, the professor said, genuine sympathy in his translated voice. She lived doing what she loved, Hay said, teaching people how to survive. I like to think I'm continuing her work in a way. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the other students practice. Cal was working with Yoon, moving slowly and carefully, his forearms making sure she understood each step. The Confederation Council has contacted me, Professor Krillix said suddenly. They want a full report on your training methods. They're considering adding human combat techniques to the standard military curriculum across all member worlds. Hay's eyes widened. Really? That's huge. It is. There's also talk of establishing formal exchange programs, bringing more human instructors to Confederation academies, sending Confederation students to Earth for immersive training. He paused. They're calling it the Deathworld Initiative. Catchy name, Hay said with a slight smile. There's more, the professor continued. They want you to be one of the first official instructors. A pilot program here at Valon Academy. You would teach a full course, not just an extracurricular activity. It would be part of every student's required training. Hay looked back at her small group, at Kale, who had gone from arrogant challenger to dedicated student, at Yoon, who had discovered strength she didn't know she had, at Dax and the others, all working hard to learn skills they had never needed before. I'm still a student myself, she said. I have so much to learn about the galaxy, about other species, about everything beyond Earth. And you'll continue learning, Professor Krillix assured her. But you have something to teach as well. Something the Confederation desperately needs, and what's that? How to survive when survival isn't guaranteed, the professor said. For thousands of years we've lived in peace and safety. We've forgotten what it means to face real danger. We've become soft. And now as we expand into unknown regions of space, we're encountering threats we're not prepared for. Pirates from unaligned systems, hostile alien species, dangerous environments. We need to relearn what you've never forgotten. I thought about Earth, about its storms and earthquakes, its predators and diseases, its long history of warfare and survival. She thought about her mother, who had spent her life teaching others to survive. I'll do it, she said, but on one condition. Name it. No watered-down version. No making it safe for comfortable students. If I'm going to teach Confederation students how to survive like a human, they need to experience what that actually means. They need to be uncomfortable. They need to be scared. They need to fail and get up and try again, just like we do on Earth. Professor Krillix's antennae went rigid, then slowly began moving again. That will be controversial. Many administrators will object. Parents will complain. Then they shouldn't take the course, Hai said firmly. Optional enrollment only. But for those who do sign up, they get the real thing. No illusions, no pretending. If you want to survive like someone from a death world, you have to train like someone from a death world. A long pause. Then Professor Krillix extended one of his 4 hands. It was a human gesture he had learned. Agreed. I'll inform the council of your conditions. They shook hands, and Hay felt the weight of what she had just agreed to. She was 19 years old, still learning, still figuring out her place in the galaxy. And now she was going to teach alien species how to think like predators, how to move like survivors, how to face fear like humans. The training session continued. As Hay worked with her students, she noticed something interesting. They were starting to move differently, more efficiently, more confidently. The constant awareness she had talked about was becoming automatic for them. They were beginning to see the world the way she did. Kale approached her as the session was ending. I heard the professor talking to you. Is it true? You're going to teach a real course? Looks like it, Hay confirmed. I want to be your assistant, Kale said immediately. I know I'm still learning, but I understand now what I didn't before. I want to help others learn what you taught me. What did I teach you? Hay asked, curious. Kale thought for a moment. Humility, awareness, efficiency. But most importantly, you taught me that strength isn't about never losing. It's about learning from defeat and becoming better. Hay smiled. That's probably the most important lesson of all. Everyone stared at Kale. The proud Threxian warrior, who had walked into class that morning radiating confidence and superiority, now stood before them, asking a human for lessons. The transformation was shocking. Hay looked at him carefully. "You're serious?" "Completely," Kale said. His voice was steady now, the shock wearing off and being replaced by something else. Determination. "My pride almost got me killed. If that had been a real fight on a real mission, I would be dead. My 300 years of warrior tradition would mean nothing because I was too arrogant to see the truth." He walked slowly back to his seat, his forearms held in a gesture that Hay's translator interpreted as humble respect. "I am a warrior. A true warrior learns from defeat, and you defeated me in seconds." Professor Krillix's antennae were quivering again, processing this unexpected development. "Perhaps we should continue with the scheduled lesson plan," he suggested weakly. "With respect, Professor," a voice came from the back of the room. It was a stocky alien with gray rock-like skin. "I think this was the scheduled lesson. We just learned more in the last 5 minutes than we have in the last 5 weeks." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the classroom. Professor Krillix looked around at his students, seeing the change in their expressions. They were engaged now, alert, focused in a way they hadn't been during his theoretical lectures. "Very well," the professor said after a moment. "Ms. Hay, would you be willing to discuss your training methods as a supplement to our regular curriculum?" Hay considered this. She hadn't come to the academy to be a teacher. She was here to learn about galactic military doctrine, alien combat styles, new technologies. But looking around the room, she saw students who had been sheltered from real danger their entire lives. Students who might someday face actual threats and have no idea how to respond. "I can share what I know," she said finally. "But I'm not a master. I'm just someone who grew up where danger was normal." Yoon raised her paw again, her voice timid but curious. "Can you tell us about the training? How does Earth teach children to fight?" I thought about how to explain it in a way they would understand. It's not just about fighting. It's about awareness. We call it situational awareness. From very young, we're taught to notice our surroundings, who's near us, where the exits are, what objects could be used as weapons or shields, what escape routes exist. She gestured around the classroom. "Right now, I know there are 3 exits. I know the closest one to me is 4.2 meters away. I know the desk over there is bolted to the floor, but those chairs can be moved. I know Professor Krillix has 4 arms, which means more attack angles but also more limbs I could control in a grapple. I know the gravity here is light, which gives me an advantage in any physical confrontation. I processed all of this in the first 30 seconds after entering the room." The students looked around nervously, suddenly aware of their own surroundings in a way they hadn't been before. "That sounds exhausting," said the rock-skinned alien, "to always be thinking about danger." "It becomes automatic," Hay explained. "Like breathing. You don't think about it constantly, but your brain is always processing, always ready." Professor Krillix moved to his teaching podium, his academic instincts taking over. "This is fascinating from a xenopsychology perspective. Earth humans have essentially evolved a constant threat assessment system. Your brains are wired differently than most sapient species. Maybe," Hay said. "Or maybe your species just evolved on easier worlds. Before space travel, before civilization, didn't your ancestors have to worry about predators? About environmental dangers?" "That was millions of years ago," the professor said. "Once we developed tools in society, those pressures disappeared. We evolved past the need for constant vigilance. Earth never gave us that chance," Hay said quietly. "Our predators evolved with us. Our diseases adapted as fast as we found cures. Our planet itself kept changing, kept challenging us. We couldn't evolve past danger because danger kept evolving with us." A long silence followed. The implications were sinking in for everyone in the room. Kale spoke again, his voice thoughtful. "The Confederation has been at peace for 200 years. Minor conflicts, yes, but no major wars. No real threats. We train for combat, but it's all theoretical. We study strategy, but we've never had to use it. And now you're meeting species from the outer regions," Hay continued for him. "Species you know nothing about. Environments you've never experienced. Real dangers, not simulations. Which is why humans are here," Professor Krillix said, understanding dawning in his voice. "The Confederation Council didn't just admit Earth out of curiosity. They admitted Earth because they need you. They need species that remember how to deal with real threats." Hay shrugged. "That's above my level. I'm just a student. But yes, I think there's more to Earth's admission than just curiosity." Another student spoke up, this one with tentacles instead of arms. "Can you tell us about other Earth combat techniques? Are there many styles?" Hundreds, Hay said. Maybe thousands, depending on how you count them. Karate, judo, kung fu, boxing, wrestling, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Krav Maga, Sambo, and those are just some of the main ones. Each developed in different regions for different purposes. Some are for sport, some for war, some for self-defense. Which one do you practice? Yoon asked. I started with Taekwondo, then added Judo, then some Krav Maga and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. My mother believed in learning multiple styles. She said every style has strengths and weaknesses, so you should know several. How long does it take to master these? Martial arts? Kale asked. Master? Years, decades, maybe never. There's always more to learn, Hay said. But basic competency. Enough to defend yourself against an untrained attacker. Maybe a year of regular practice. A year? Professor Krillix sounded shocked. Our basic combat course is 6 weeks. 6 weeks to learn theory, Hay corrected gently. How much of that is actual physical training? The professor's antennae drooped. About 20%. The rest is strategy, tactics, history, and ethics. On Earth, it's reversed. We do 80% physical training. You can't learn to fight by reading about it. You have to do it. You have to feel what it's like when someone grabs you, when you hit the ground, when your muscles burn from exhaustion, when you're scared but you keep moving anyway. She stood up and walked back to the center of the room. Professor, with your permission, I'd like to show the class something else. Something basic that anyone can learn. Professor Krillix nodded slowly. Please proceed. Hay turned to face the class. The move I used on Kale is called a rear naked choke. It's one of the most effective control techniques ever developed by humans. It's been used for over 2,000 years in various forms by warriors all over Earth. The reason it's lasted so long is simple. It works on any opponent, regardless of size or strength. She gestured for Yoon to come forward. The small alien hesitated, her large eyes wide with fear. I won't hurt you, Hay promised. I just want to show you how to escape if someone grabs you from behind. On your world, this might never happen. But out in the galaxy, you might visit rough places. You should know basic self-defense, Yoon slowly approached. She was tiny compared to Hay, barely reaching her chest. Turn around, Hay instructed gently. When Yoon did, Hay very carefully and slowly wrapped her arm around the small alien's throat. Not tight, just demonstrating the position. If someone grabs you like this, your first instinct is to pull at their arm, right? Yoon nodded, her paws already moving to Hay's arm. That doesn't work, Hay said. They're stronger than you. Instead, you do this. She guided Yoon's movements. Tuck your chin down to protect your throat. Turn toward my elbow, not away. Step to the side. Now duck under my arm while you turn. Following Hay's guidance, Yoon executed the escape. Suddenly she was free, standing apart from Hay, breathing fast but unharmed. Simple, Hay said. Basic but effective. These are the kinds of things every human learns. The class erupted in discussion, students talking to each other, some standing up to try the movement themselves. Professor Krillix watched it all with his antennae waving in what might have been approval or concern or both. Kyle approached Hay again. When can we start training? Hay walked slowly to the center of the classroom where Kyle waited. Her boots made soft sounds on the floor. Around them, students shifted in their seats to get a better view. Some of the smaller aliens moved their chairs back as if distance would make them safer. Professor Krillix moved to the side of the room, his 4 arms clasped together in what seemed like worry. Remember, this is a controlled demonstration. Slow movements only. The purpose is education, not combat. Kyle nodded, but his eyes never left Hay. He held his blade in a formal grip, the weapon angled across his body in what was clearly a practiced stance. His muscles were tense and ready. Even in this safe demonstration, his body showed the training of a warrior culture. This is a Threxian combat blade, Kale announced to the class. His voice carried pride. It has been in my family for 6 generations. The edge is monomolecular, capable of cutting through most materials with ease. In the hands of a trained Threxian warrior, it is nearly unstoppable. Hay stood relaxed, her hands at her sides. She wore simple academy training clothes, nothing special. Compared to Kale's impressive uniform with its medals and family crests, she looked plain, ordinary, almost boring. Human, Kyle said, his tone formal but with an edge of condescension. I will demonstrate a basic attack pattern. Your role is to show the proper Confederation response. You should step back, call for help, and keep distance. Do you understand? I understand what you want me to do. Hai replied calmly. Kyle frowned slightly at her answer but continued. Good. I will move slowly so you can see the blades approach. In a real situation, this attack would be much faster. Watch carefully. He shifted his stance and the classroom held its breath. Even Professor Krillix leaned forward, his antennae rigid with attention. According to Confederation protocol, Kyle said, beginning to move. You should now. You're holding it wrong. Hai said quietly. Kale stopped. The room went completely silent. What did you say? Your grip, Hay said, still calm. It's too formal. Too rigid. If someone actually wanted to hurt me with that knife, they wouldn't hold it like that. They'd hold it like they meant to use it. A few students gasped. Speaking to Kale like this was bold. The Threxians were known for their pride, especially about combat. Challenging his technique in front of the entire class was a serious insult. Kale's blue skin darkened slightly, a sign of anger in his species. I am holding it in the traditional Threxian warrior stance passed down for… Exactly, Hay interrupted. Traditional, formal. Anyone who trains can see it coming. But in a real fight, people don't use tradition. They use whatever works. Professor Krillix stepped forward, his voice uncertain. Ms. Hay, perhaps we should proceed with the demonstration as planned. Kale's technique is well established in military. With respect, Professor, Hay said, turning to face him, this isn't a real demonstration of knife threats. This is a dance. It's beautiful, but it's not dangerous. The professor's antennae quivered. Are you suggesting that the Confederation's protocols are inadequate? I'm saying they're based on assumptions that don't apply on Earth, Hay replied. She looked around the room at the other students. How many of you have actually been in a life-threatening situation? Where someone really wanted to kill you? No hands went up. The students looked at each other uncomfortably. That's what I thought, Hay said, not unkindly. You're all from safe worlds. Class 1 or Class 2 at most. Your planets have been civilized for thousands of years. The most dangerous thing you face is maybe a sports injury or a traffic accident. A small alien in the front row with fur like a rabbit and large nervous eyes raised her paw timidly. Is it true that on Earth you can die just from walking outside? Depends where you walk, Hay said. But yes, it's possible. Australia alone has 21 of the world's 25 most venomous snakes. We have spiders whose bite can kill a human in 15 minutes. We have jellyfish that are almost invisible and completely lethal. We have bears, tigers, sharks, crocodiles, hippos, and hundreds of other animals that see humans as food. The rabbit-like alien, whose nameplate read Yoon, looked horrified. How do you survive? We learn, Hay said simply. From childhood. We learn to recognize danger. We learn to react fast. We learn that hesitation means death. Kale had been standing still during this exchange, his blade still raised. Now he spoke, his voice tight with controlled anger. Are you saying that my training is inadequate? No, he said, turning back to him. I'm saying your training is for a different kind of fight. A formal duel, a contest of skill. But what you're supposed to be teaching us today is survival against a real threat, and those are very different things. Then perhaps you should demonstrate, Kale said coldly. Show us how a human handles a knife threat. The challenge hung in the air. Professor Krillix looked like he wanted to intervene but wasn't sure how. The other students were completely focused now, fear and fascination mixing on their alien faces. Are you sure? Hay asked. I don't want to embarrass you. That was the wrong thing to say. Kale's pride, already wounded, flared into anger. Embarrass me? You are a first-day student from a primitive world that only just discovered space travel. I am a decorated warrior from a military tradition spanning millennia. You couldn't embarrass me if you tried, he sighed softly. Okay, but I need you to understand something first. The way I was trained, there's no such thing as a gentle knife fight. If someone has a blade and they're close enough to use it, you have about 2 seconds to stop them or you're bleeding, maybe dying. There's no middle ground. I understand the theoretical, Kale began. No, Hay said firmly. You don't, none of you do. That's the problem with learning combat in a safe classroom on a safe world. It's all theoretical. You've never felt what it's like when your brain realizes you might die in the next 3 seconds. You've never had that fear turn into action without thinking. She looked at Kale directly. If I demonstrate the way I was actually taught, you're going to hit the ground hard. You might get hurt. Your pride will definitely get hurt. Are you absolutely sure you want this? Kale's forearms tensed. His glowing eyes narrowed. I have fought in 16 honor duels. I have trained since I was old enough to hold a blade. I have never been defeated by an opponent, I am sure. All right, Hay said quietly. She settled into a stance that looked nothing like Kale's formal position. Her weight was balanced, her hands open and ready, her body slightly angled. It looked simple, almost casual. But something about the way she held herself made several students unconsciously push their chairs back further. Professor Krillix held up one hand. Wait. Perhaps we should discuss the rules of engagement first. Establish clear boundaries and safety. In a real knife fight, there are no rules, Hay said, not taking her eyes off Kale. That's the lesson. Kale smiled, showing teeth. Then let us begin your education, human. Try to defend yourself. He moved forward with his blade faster than before, but still controlled, still following his training. In his mind, he was being generous, giving her a chance to react, to learn. He had no idea what was about to happen. Hay's smile never wavered. If anything, it grew slightly wider, and in that smile something ancient and predatory looked out from behind her eyes. Something that had survived countless dangers, evolved through 1,000,000 years of warfare and hunting on the deadliest planet in known space. Something that Kale, and his 300 years of proud warrior tradition was completely unprepared, for the lesson was about to truly begin. Kale moved forward with his blade leading the way. To his eyes, trained by generations of Threxian warriors, it was a perfect strike. Controlled, powerful. With the blade angled to demonstrate threat without actual danger, he was still thinking like an instructor, planning how he would explain the movement to the class after the human girl scrambled backward in panic. He expected her to flinch, to step back, to raise her hands in fear. That's what every other student did during these demonstrations. Even experienced fighters showed respect for a blade moving toward them. Hay did none of those things. Instead, she stepped forward, directly into his attack. Kyle's warrior instinct screamed at him that something was wrong. But it was already too late. The distance he had planned for, the space he needed to demonstrate proper form, simply vanished. She was inside his reach before his brain could process what had happened. Her left hand moved in a blur. Not the elaborate flowing blocks of formal martial arts, not the wide theatrical movements of demonstration combat, just a simple, direct motion that crashed into his wrist like a hammer. The impact sent a shock through his arm, and suddenly his perfect grip on the blade wasn't so perfect anymore. Her right hand came next, striking the back of his knife hand with the heel of her palm. The blade fell from his fingers and clattered against the floor with a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the silent classroom. But she wasn't done. While Kale was still processing the fact that he had been disarmed in less than a second, Hay moved behind him, her arm wrapped around his throat, not crushing, but firm and completely unavoidable. Her legs hooked around his, and suddenly his superior height and forearms meant nothing. His balance was gone. The light gravity of the classroom actually worked against him. On his homeworld, he was used to fighting against his own weight. Here in 0.6 G, he was too light to plant himself properly. He used that, taking him down in a controlled fall that ended with him on his stomach and her controlling him completely from behind. The entire sequence took exactly 2.3 seconds. Professor Krillix stood frozen, his forearms held up in shock. His antennae were completely still, a sign of absolute astonishment in his species. Around the room, students sat with their mouths open, or their equivalent depending on their species. Yoon, the small rabbit-like alien, had both paws pressed against her mouth. His voice was calm and quiet, speaking directly into Kale's ear. Tap or nap. That means tap my arm if you submit, or you're going unconscious. Your choice. 3 seconds, Kale tried to move. His pride, his warrior training, everything in him demanded that he fight back. But he couldn't, his arms couldn't reach her. His legs couldn't get leverage. The pressure on his neck wasn't painful yet, but he could feel his blood flow being restricted. Dark spots started appearing at the edges of his vision. His hand slapped against her arm 3 times, quick, desperate. Instantly, the pressure vanished. Hay released him and stood up, offering her hand to help him rise. Her expression showed no triumph, no pride, just calm professionalism. Kale took her hand, his mind still struggling to understand what had happened. She pulled him up easily, and he realized she was strong. Very strong. The light gravity here meant nothing to her. She had pulled him up like he weighed nothing at all. Are you okay? Hay asked. genuine concern in her voice. Cale nodded, not trusting himself to speak yet. He rubbed his throat, which was slightly sore but not injured. She had been careful not to hurt him, he realized. If she had wanted to actually harm him, if this had been a real fight, the thought made his skin darken again, but this time, not with anger. With fear. Someone explained to me what just happened, Professor Krillix said, his voice shaky. I have been teaching combat theory for 20 years. I have never seen anything like that. Hay picked up Cale's blade from the floor and examined it carefully. The weapon was still active, still dangerous. She handled it with respect but no fear, then walked over to return it to Cale. He took it with trembling hands. On Earth we have a saying, Hai said, turning to address the class. In a knife fight, the loser dies in the street. The winner dies in the ambulance. Confused looks passed between the students. Yoon raised her paw again. What does that mean? It means there's no such thing as winning a knife fight, Hai explained. Even if you defeat your opponent, you're probably going to get cut. And even a small cut can be fatal if it hits the wrong place or if the blade is dirty. So we're taught from childhood. If someone has a knife and you can't run, you end the fight immediately. No hesitation. No technique demonstration. You stop the threat right now because every second that knife is in play is another second you might die. She looked around the room, meeting eyes with various students. Your protocols are good for your worlds. Calling for help makes sense when help is close. Retreating makes sense when you have space to retreat. Negotiating makes sense when your opponent is rational. But on Earth, we can't always count on those things. So we train differently. A tall, thin alien with too many joints in its arms spoke up. But you were so fast. How did you move like that? Practice, Hay said simply. I've been training in hand-to-hand combat since I was 6 years old. Not for sport. Not for exercise. For survival. My mother was a combat instructor. She taught me that on Earth, knowing how to fight isn't a hobby. It's a life skill like knowing how to swim or drive a car. 6 years old? Yoon looked horrified. That's just a child. On Earth, children need to know how to protect themselves, Hai said. We have martial arts schools in every city. Different styles, different techniques, but all designed for one purpose. To stop threats quickly and efficiently. Professor Krillix had recovered some of his composure. He moved to the center of the room, his antennae slowly starting to move again. Ms. Hay, what you demonstrated was certainly effective, but it seems extremely violent for a civilized society. Surely such aggressive techniques are unnecessary in normal life. Unnecessary until they're needed, Hay replied. Most humans go their whole lives without ever using combat training. But we all have it just in case. It's like having fire extinguishers. You hope you never need them, but you're glad they're there. Cal finally found his voice. It came out rough, still affected by the pressure on his throat. You said you were terrified, but you showed no fear. You moved with complete confidence. How? Hay turned to look at him. Her expression was sympathetic. I was terrified, she confirmed. My heart was pounding. My adrenaline was spiking. Every danger sense I have was screaming. But fear and action aren't opposites on Earth. We're taught to act because we're afraid, not to freeze because of it. She paused, considering her words carefully. I grew up in a city where I had to walk past 3 species of venomous snakes to get to school. Where spiders that could kill me in minutes sometimes got into our houses. Where the ocean had sharks and jellyfish and stingrays and dozens of other things that could end my life. Fear was constant, but if we let fear stop us from moving, from acting, from living, we'd never leave our homes. And even in your homes you had dangers, Professor Krillix said quietly. He had clearly read the reports on Earth. Even in our homes, Hai agreed. So we learned. We adapted. Fear became information, not paralysis. When you feel fear, you assess the threat, you make a decision, and you act. Freezing gets you killed. The classroom was completely silent now. Every student was looking at Hai with new eyes. Not just curiosity anymore. Understanding, and more than a little fear. She walked back to her seat slowly, aware of all the eyes tracking her movement. As she sat down, she noticed several students had moved their chairs even further away. Cale remained standing in the center of the room. He sheathed his blade with shaking hands, then looked at Hay across the classroom. Teach me, he said suddenly. The classroom was filled with strange beings from 100 different worlds. Some had scales, some had fur, and some glowed with soft light from within their translucent skin. They sat in rows of specially designed chairs. each one adjusted for their unique body shapes. The room hummed with quiet conversation in a dozen alien languages, all translated instantly by the small devices everyone wore behind their ears. Hay stood in the doorway and took a deep breath. This was it. Her first day at Valon Academy, the most famous military school in the entire Galactic Confederation. She adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder and walked inside. The conversations stopped. Every eye in the room turned to look at her. She felt the weight of their stares but kept her face calm and neutral. She had expected this. Humans were new here, very new. Professor Krillix stood at the front of the classroom. He was tall and thin, with a body that looked like a praying mantis from Earth, but much larger. His forearms moved gracefully as he organized his teaching materials. His large compound eyes reflected the light in strange patterns. When he noticed Hay, his antennae twitched with what might have been surprise or curiosity. "Ah, you must be our new student," he said. His voice came through her translator as calm and professional. "Please take any available seat." Hay nodded politely and scanned the room. Most students had left empty seats around them, probably not wanting to sit too close to the unknown human. She spotted a seat in the middle row and walked toward it. As she moved, she noticed how easy everything felt. The gravity here was lighter than Earth, much lighter. She had to be careful not to bounce with each step. As she sat down, she heard whispers around her. The translation device picked up fragments of conversations. "That's a human? From Earth, the Class 12 Deathworld. I heard their planet has poisonous air. No, that's not right. I heard everything on their planet tries to kill them. My professor said humans are dangerous. Very aggressive," Hay pretended not to hear. She pulled out her tablet and opened the class materials, focusing on the screen in front of her. She understood why they were scared. Earth had shocked the Galactic Confederation when they first made contact 5 years ago. The scientists who studied Earth couldn't believe humans had survived at all. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world, the highest danger rating possible. Most aliens came from Class 1 or Class 2 worlds, where the biggest threats were bad weather or maybe a few large animals. Earth had volcanoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, and tsunamis. It had animals with venom that could kill in seconds. It had bacteria and viruses that evolved almost as fast as medicine could fight them. It had plants that could poison you just by touching them. And humans had not just survived there. They had thrived. They had become the apex predators of a world full of apex predators. A large figure moved into the seat next to her. Hay looked up and saw a tall alien with deep blue skin and powerful muscles visible beneath his fitted uniform. He had forearms like the professor, but his body was more humanoid. His face was angular and sharp, with eyes that glowed slightly in the dim classroom light. "So you're the human," he said. His tone was not friendly. "I am Kale of the Threxian Empire. My people have been the finest warriors in the Confederation for 300 years. Hay looked at him calmly. "Nice to meet you, Kale. I'm Hay." "Just Hay?" He seemed surprised. "No house name? No clan designation?" "Just Hay," she confirmed. Kale leaned back in his seat and she could see him studying her. "You don't look very dangerous," he said. "Earth must not be as terrible as the reports claim." Before Hay could respond, Professor Krillix called the class to attention. His voice cut through the murmurs easily. "Welcome, students, to Advanced Combat Theory. This course will challenge everything you think you know about survival and tactical thinking." His antennae swept the room. "Today we have a special addition to our class. As you've all noticed, we have our first human student. This provides us with a unique learning opportunity." Hai felt her stomach tighten. She didn't like being made into a spectacle, but she kept her expression neutral. "Humans come from what we classify as a hyper-dangerous environment," the professor continued. "Their homeworld has forced them to develop unusual survival strategies. I'm sure we will all learn much from having Hai in our class." He paused. "Now, let us begin today's lesson on lethal force encounters." The professor's primary arms moved over his control panel, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed various scenarios of armed conflicts. In Confederation space, the use of bladed weapons is considered an extreme threat, Professor Krillix explained. Most civilized worlds abandoned such primitive tools millennia ago. However, in some regions you may still encounter them. Today we will discuss proper protocols for such situations. The hologram changed to show a figure holding a knife. The professor's lecture continued with details about retreat procedures, how to call for security, negotiation techniques, and when to use stunning weapons as a last resort. He listened carefully, but something felt wrong about the lesson. It was all too slow, too cautious. On Earth, if someone pulled a knife on you, you didn't have time for all these steps. You acted immediately or you died. Kale raised one of his hands. Professor, with respect, this seems overly cautious. In the Threxian military, we train extensively with blades. They are weapons of honor and skill. Yes, Kale, your people do have a unique cultural relationship with bladed combat, the professor acknowledged. But remember, most species do not have your advantages in reaction time and strength. Kyle stood up suddenly. Perhaps a demonstration would help the class understand, especially our new student who comes from such a dangerous world. There was a challenge in his voice. I could show proper blade defense techniques. Professor Krillix hesitated. His antennae twitched with uncertainty. I'm not sure that's appropriate for a classroom setting. It would be educational, Kale pressed. Purely theoretical, of course. Slow movements only. The professor looked around the room. Other students were nodding, interested in seeing a practical demonstration. Finally, he agreed. Very well. But remember, this is an educational exercise only. Safety protocols must be observed. Kale smiled and reached to his belt. He drew a curved blade that gleamed under the classroom lights. The edge looked impossibly sharp, and the metal seemed to shimmer with some kind of energy field. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. He turned to face Hay. Human, would you care to volunteer? Let me show you how a true warrior handles a blade threat. Every eye in the classroom turned to Hay again. The room was completely silent. Most of the students looked worried for her. A few looked curious. Kale looked confident, almost smug. Hay closed her tablet slowly and stood up. The gravity was still light, making her feel like she was floating slightly with each movement. She looked at Kale, at his blade, at his confident stance, and then she smiled.